The role of conscription in modern conflicts. Conscription, in one form or another, has been used by nations throughout history to fill the ranks of their armed forces. Although highly controversial, it remains a practice in the modern world. In the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, both nations have relied on conscription to strengthen their forces. In Ukraine, laws mandate that all men between the ages of 18 and 60 register for conscription, though initially only those aged 27 to 60 were subject to being called up for service. However, following recent losses, this minimum age was lowered to 25 in early 2024. Women with medical training are also required to register, though they are not obligated to serve. Nevertheless, those with medical qualifications can expect to be called upon in a national emergency. On the opposing side, Russia has also implemented conscription. A law that took effect on January 1st, 2024, requires all Russian men aged 18 to 30 to serve for 1 year in the Russian armed forces, raising the upper limit from 27. By July 2024, approximately 150,000 men had been drafted under this policy. According to Russian law, these conscripts are not to be deployed outside of Russia, effectively freeing up professional military units for frontline service. However, some reports suggest that conscripts have been sent to Ukraine, allegedly by mistake, with additional reports of violations that are difficult to confirm. These policies are highly controversial, with both nations witnessing a significant exodus of military-age men. In Ukraine, a recent poll revealed that 46% of respondents considered draft evasion acceptable, while a quarter remained uncertain. In Russia, leaving the country after receiving a summons for military service is classified as a felony. Despite the unpopularity of conscription, both sides will likely continue to depend on it until the conflict's resolution. Conscription itself is not a new phenomenon. It dates back to ancient times and has been employed by nearly every major world power throughout history. During the First and Second World Wars, participating nations faced severe losses among their troops, necessitating strict conscription measures to replenish their forces. When voluntary enlistment failed to meet demand, compulsory service became the solution. After the world wars ended, the immediate need for soldiers diminished, though many countries continued to enforce mandatory military service. Even today, the prospect of conscription remains a concern for many. Across the world, numerous countries still enforce some form of compulsory service, typically requiring male citizens to serve whether they wish to or not. Around 85 nations maintain conscription, often as a response to persistent threats. South Korea, for example, mandates that all able-bodied men aged 18 to 36 undergo military training as a defense against North Korea. Other countries, such as Switzerland, view conscription as a matter of national security despite facing no immediate threats. Switzerland has maintained compulsory military service for its male population since 1848 and continues to do so today, despite having remained neutral in conflicts for centuries. Surprisingly, this policy remains popular among the Swiss and is a significant part of their national identity. In a 2013 referendum, over 73% of voters supported retaining the system. Following World War II, the United Kingdom also continued conscription to ensure sufficient military personnel for operations in occupied Germany, the Middle East, and India. In 1947, Parliament passed the National Service Act, requiring all physically capable men between 17 and 21 to serve for 18 months, with exemptions for university students and apprentices. After completing their service, They remained in the reserves for 4 years. In total, around 2 million men were conscripted until the law was repealed in 1960, though those with deferments still had to serve. The final national servicemen were discharged in 1963. Training was brief, lasting just 6 weeks, prioritizing rapid preparation. Living conditions varied but were generally substandard, and conscripts earned far less than the average British worker at the time. After training, they were assigned to military garrisons worldwide, with some stationed in peaceful locations like Germany, and others deployed to active war zones, including Cyprus, the Malayan Emergency, and the Suez Canal crisis. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, British troops participated as part of the UN coalition, prompting the government to extend conscription from 18 months to 2 years. Between 1947 and 1963, 395 British national servicemen were killed in action, with many more wounded. The United States also maintained conscription after World War II, commonly referred to as the draft. The Selective Training and Service Act, which had conscripted millions during the war, was set to expire in 1947. However, at President Harry Truman's urging, Congress renewed it in 1948. This was initially a temporary measure set to end in 1950, but was extended due to the outbreak of the Korean War. Approximately 1.2 million men were drafted to fight, with another 1.5 million assigned to occupation duties in Europe and Asia between 1954 and 1961. Among these conscripts was Elvis Presley, one of the most famous entertainers of the time, who served in the 3rd Armored Division in West Germany from 1958 to 1960. As U.S. involvement in Vietnam escalated, the Selective Service System was once again used to meet manpower demands. To maintain fairness, a lottery system was introduced, selecting birth dates at random in a publicly observed and transparent process. If a man's number was drawn, he was drafted. Some deferments were granted based on factors such as university enrollment, medical conditions, or family circumstances. Despite attempts at fairness, the draft was widely unpopular, fueling the growing anti-war movement in the United States. By the time the U.S. withdrew from Vietnam, 17,671 draftees had been killed, accounting for roughly 30% of total American losses in the war. The draft's unpopularity was so profound that, despite numerous military engagements since Vietnam, all subsequent U.S. conflicts have been fought entirely by volunteer forces. However, the U.S. still maintains the Selective Service System, requiring all men aged 18 to 26 to register in case a draft is reinstated. The debate over conscription remains ongoing. Supporters argue that it provides essential manpower during national emergencies, while fostering a sense of patriotism, duty, and discipline that benefits individuals and society. They believe military service instills valuable life lessons that carry over into civilian life, benefiting both the conscript and the nation in the long run. Opponents, however, argue that forcing individuals to serve is immoral, compelling them to risk their lives, endure severe physical harm, and suffer psychological trauma for causes they may not support. From a practical standpoint, unwilling conscripts may lack motivation, potentially becoming liabilities in combat. As one Ukrainian soldier in the ongoing conflict stated, "We still want people to join voluntarily, because there's a big difference between someone who was drafted into the army and someone who went to defend their homeland. The desire to fight the enemy is very important in addition to training, equipment, and preparedness." While history has seen countless conscripts serve with distinction and bravery, the practice remains deeply divisive. Given today's unstable geopolitical climate, there are growing fears that widespread conflicts may force nations to reinstate conscription. Whether these fears will materialize or remain hypothetical, one certainty remains. The prospect of the draft will continue to loom large in the minds of many around the world.